Wow. Thank you so much, Mark. That was fantastic. That was really amazing. I love the guy's spirit. And I love being here with you this morning. What an honor it is for me to be back in your presence. I was reminded of an old man who went fishing, 80 years of age. Walked up to the lake, casted out his line. All of a sudden he heard a voice saying, "Hey, pick me up, give me a kiss, I'll turn into a princess." He looked around, he thought he was going nuts. A minute goes by, "Hey, pick me up, give me a kiss, I'll turn into a princess." He looks down and he sees a frog. He says, "You talking to me?" "Yes, pick me up, give me a kiss, and I'll turn into a princess." He picks up the frog, he puts it in his coat pocket. And the frog says, "Hey, I said if you give me a kiss, I'll turn into a princess." And the old man said, "That's okay, at my age, I'd rather have a talking frog." You know, to this day, I don't know why people laugh so much when they hear that joke. I am overwhelmed with the honor of being here with you this day. I have been here 4 times in 7 months. Very rarely do I have such an outstanding invitation to come to the same place so many times, but for me it's an honor and a privilege. And I want to thank Dr. Schuler, I want to thank Sheila, and I want to thank Gretchen for expressing to me the confidence and the trust to stand before this great church, because I love being here. And I really enjoy being here because I like you. You are some of the finest people, and I am a richer man because of friends like you. I believe that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Coming up with today's message title was rather challenging. I've always believed, and has sort of been mentored in the sense by Dr. Schuler, that you should come up with a title that really nails it, a hook, something that really grabs the attention. And when I decided what I wanted to speak on today, the whole idea was, is your reason for doing something larger than any excuse you could come up with? I thought, well, there's not a hook there. I got to come up with something better. Is your why bigger than any excuse you could come up with? I thought, no, I could do better than that. And came up with, is your why bigger than your butt? I thought Dr. Schuler would really like that title. And that is the truth. When our reason to do something is larger than our excuse, then there's nothing we cannot do in Jesus' name. I believe that beyond the shadow of a doubt. No matter what it is that you set out to do, if your excuse is larger than your reason, you'll look for a shorter shortcut. Now, I lost 60 pounds 13 years ago, so I am half the man that I used to be. And no matter where I've traveled, no matter where I've gone, throughout Latin America and the United States, no one has ever asked me why I lost the weight. Everyone wants to know how. But the how is not the right question to ask. I could take you to Barnes & Noble and take you to a Borders or any other bookstore and show you thousands of books on how to make money, on how to lose weight, on how to have a healthy and happy marriage, how to raise godly kids, how to reach the goals and the dreams and the aspirations. What no one can show you and what no one can do for you is give you a why. Only you and God can come up with a why. And if your why is bigger than your excuse, the but, the conjunction, then there isn't anything, I believe there's nothing you can't overcome. Numbers 16 has a wonderful story. It talks about a man by the name of Korah, who was a rebellious man, filled with pessimism. He was negative. He was a backbiter. He was a grumbler. And he walked up to Moses and he said to them, "You've put too many demands on the Lord's people." And the Lord, to make the story a little bit more concise, a little shorter, the Lord speaks to Moses and says, "Move away from these grumbling, complaining people so I can put an end to them at once. And that's in fact what happened. The ground opens up and swallows up Korah and 250 members of his family and his household. Now you would think that the nation of Israel would have learned their lesson. But apparently they didn't, because in verse 41 it says, "The next day the whole Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. 'You've killed the Lord's people,' they said. But when the assembly gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron and turned toward the tent of meeting, suddenly the cloud covered it and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron went to the front of the tent of meeting, and the Lord said to Moses, 'Get away from this assembly so I can put an end to them at once.' And they fell face down. Then Moses said to Aaron, 'Take your censer and put incense in it along with fire from the altar, and hurry to the assembly to make atonement for them. Wrath has come out from the Lord. The plague has started.' So Aaron did as Moses said and ran into the midst of the assembly. The plague had already started among the people. But Aaron offered the incense and made atonement for them." Verse 48. "And he stood between the living and the dead, and the plague stopped. But 14,700 people died from the plague, in addition to those who had died because of Korah. Then Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting, for the plague had stopped." Have you ever stood between the living and the dead? Have you ever stood in a place where you could feel death's breath on the back of your neck? Have you ever been in a place where you could see life or death literally passing before your eyes? I think most of us here would say yes. And I'll tell you why. Because I was once lost, and now I'm found. I was once dead, and God brought me back to life. How many of you were once lost, and now you're found? You know exactly what it's like to pass from death and come back to life. And when I see Aaron standing in that gap, interceding for those people, I see an image of someone. And when I asked myself that question, why in the world would he do that? Because Aaron had a why that was bigger than his excuse. And I see the image of Aaron standing there. He's bridging the gap between the living and the dead, and I see the same image of Jesus on a cross that reaches into death, bringing people back to life. And that's exactly what God does. That's exactly what God can do. That's exactly what God desires to do in your life. He desires to take your hand and lead you from that desolate spot of death and bring you back to life. There is great hope here this morning, friends. If you feel overwhelmed, if you don't know how you're going to make it, maybe you've started this year and it has not blossomed into the year that you hoped it would. I've come to tell you this morning that He stands in the gap and He invites you to take His hand from death, leads you back to life. I received an email this week from a friend of mine from Costa Rica. His name is Andre. He told me that he is the father of 2 children, that he is in charge of international and national sales in that corporation, that God has helped him move up the corporate ladder. He's a successful businessman in every sense of the word. Now let me pause the tape and let me rewind the tape 15